Hi and welcome to this video. I'm going to show you how you can use flows to post a message in Teams when a vulnerability is created in AttackForge. Flows is a new module which is purpose-built for automations and integrations. This example is also on our support site, so you can also follow along here as well. And similar, if you go to the AttackForge Flows GitHub repository, you can download this example directly from the Microsoft Teams folder. There's an example flow here to create a Teams message. So you can import this flow into your own AttackForge, really just to get up and running much faster. But let's go in and check out this flow and see it in action. So we'll come to a project in AttackForge, and let's go in and just create a vulnerability. So we're going to search our write-ups library, in this case for a cross-site scripting we found, and we'll go ahead and now assign the affected assets to this vulnerability, and let's go in and save that. So now if we scroll across into Teams, we'll see that there's been a message posted in our Teams channel. So let's take a look at how that actually happened. So back in AttackForge, we're going to take a look at the Flows module. Now, Flows is a new module. It will show under integrations if you have access to it. And from here, we'll see that I have a flow called Create Teams Message. So let's go in and open that one up. And what we'll see is there was a flow that ran just now. So that's the one that went and created that message that we can see in Teams. So if we open that up, what we'll see is some information. And the first thing we'll notice that this is a flow that's been configured on the vulnerability created event. So that means as vulnerabilities get created, we may potentially end up posting some messages out in Teams channels. So how did we do that? So we'll see here that this flow has only one action, which is to create a Teams channel message. And the input into that action is the vulnerability data. So this is vulnerability data that's come across from the vulnerability created event itself. So we can see we have all of that key information about this vulnerability. The output itself is, at this point, is just the vulnerability data as well. So if we click on HTTP, what we'll notice is there was a request going out to the Microsoft Teams API in order to post a message out to this channel. Now, for this particular example, we've used incoming webhooks. So there is a link to this page from our support site. So before you can go in and start setting up your flows to push data out to Teams, in this example, you would go in first and set up an incoming webhook in order to post that message out to your Teams channel. You can follow the guide here, and it takes you step by step in how to go in and set up that incoming webhook itself. So coming back to our flow, what we'll notice is that there was a post request that has gone out to that webhook. It's come back with a 202 response from the server, and we can see exactly what information was sent to the API in terms of the request body, but also the request headers as well. And we can see that there was no data that came back from the Teams API. However, there was some headers that was returned from the server itself. If we click on logs, we can see again any information from a logging perspective as well. This is useful to help create any error messages or debugging or anything else to help you with troubleshooting or understanding how your flows are operating in the real world as well. So let's go in and actually take a look at how this action is working. So we're going to open up the flow and click on edit. And what we'll notice again that the event trigger is vulnerability created. So we are sending data out as the vulnerability gets created in AttackForge. However, in your use case, it could be, for example, only when there's QA completed on the vulnerability. So in that case, you may rely on a vulnerability updated event, and in particular, adjust the logic to make sure that the QA is being completed. Or separately, you may decide to post your messages out to teams when the project's completed. So again, that could be happening on potentially on a project updated event. But in this example, we've done it based on vulnerability created, and we can see there's only one action, and that action is to create a Teams channel message. Now we can see that it's a post request, and again, that's based on the API documentation. And also we can see that the URL itself is going to be dynamic. So for that reason, it's going to be specified in the request script. So we'll go in and set that dynamically in our script. However, we can go in and set the headers if we know what those are ahead of time. In this case, the content type, setting it to application JSON, and also the accept header as well. So let's actually take a look at the request script to see what's happening. So what you'll notice on this page is that there's two sort of key components. On the right hand side, we have information about the vulnerability. Now, because we're setting up a flow, this is just some test data which would be resembling what a vulnerability created event would look like. And we can access that information through data. And on the left-hand side, we can see the script that's going to be executing itself. And this is using AFScript, which is AttackForge's own in-app scripting and programming language. If it's the first time that you're building a flow, we do strongly recommend to go to our support site and click on AFScript and have a bit of a read so you can understand a little bit more about how it works as well. So our script is starting with extracting some information about the project. In particular, we have two variables to collect the project ID and the project name, and that's going to be used as part of some information within the message itself. So we can click on the link and open up the vulnerability in AttackForge. So for that reason, we need to know the project that the vulnerability belongs to. So we're going to extract that information from the vulnerability. The vulnerability payload itself has information about the vulnerability, its affected assets, information about the project, information about the write-up, and any other details there as well. Here we're checking to make sure we found the project information, and if so, proceeding to now build up a text message that's going to be sent to teams. So here we're starting with getting some information about the vulnerability priority itself, and then going and adding the title of the vulnerability. And we can see that information in terms of how it's going to be output in Teams. And we're also going to have a link there so we can then click the link to then view the vulnerability in AttackForge. And that's where we're leveraging the project ID as well. Now the response itself, this is what the payload's going to look like. Firstly, the URL, we can see some information here, and in particular using a secret in order to capture the signature for this incoming webhook, which is used to authenticate against that webhook endpoint. So we can see this is how we're dynamically constructing the URL because of that signature. And separately, the body of the request, we're actually using an adaptive card. So there is more information available on Microsoft's support pages on how to use adaptive cards. So this example, we are taking advantage of this. So you can just sort of Google Microsoft adaptive cards or come directly to this page and read a bit more about it. But for that reason, we're structuring the payload to look that's in a way that matches that schema. So we've included the message saying and the actual text itself, which we can see down the bottom here. Now, once that gets said, there's going to be a response coming back from the team server. And so let's take a look at the response script. So here we can see that we can access the response data as an object. It has a status code. So that's the HTTP status code from the server, the response headers, and the response body as well. Because we're not expecting any data to come back from that particular team's API beyond, in particular, I should say the body. We're not expecting a body to come back. We're relying on the HTTP status code to tell us whether our request was successful or not. So a 202, according to the API documentation, means that it was successful. So in that case, we're checking whether the response has a HTTP status code equal to 202. And if that's the case, we can either decide to continue flow if there's any further actions, or we can finish up the flow as well. Otherwise, if there's been an error, we're going to log out that error message and then have a sort of error return so we can investigate and see what happened. But that's really all there is to it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.